Today, we're jumping into this really wild framework from an author named Alastair of Candamo, and it's a big one. It's an idea that connects something as fundamental as the physics of a musical chord, all the way to why our society feels like it's fracturing, and even down to the nitty-gritty of how we argue with each other.
So let's start right here with this statement. I mean, it sounds completely backward, doesn't it? We spend our entire lives being told to chase perfection. But this idea that perfection is actually a failure state, a dead end, that is the absolute key that unlocks this entire way of thinking.
To really wrap our heads around that quote, we've got to start at the most basic level you can imagine. We're talking about the deep mathematics that underpins, well, everything, from the cosmos itself to the music you listen to.
You've probably seen this number before, right? It's the golden ratio, phi. It shows up everywhere in nature. Spiral galaxies, seashells, you name it. The framework calls this the baseline of indifferent perfection. It's like nature's default setting for perfect structural balance.
Okay, now look at this tiny number. Here's where it gets really interesting. It turns out that a beautiful, perfect-sounding musical interval, the major sixth, isn't actually mathematically perfect according to phi. It's off by this exact, tiny amount, and this little variance, it isn't a flaw. It's the secret ingredient. The framework gives it a name, sincere friction.
And this is the perfect illustration of why that friction is so crucial. Let's think about the Big Bang. If the universe had been born with perfect symmetry, a perfect balance of matter and antimatter, they would have just canceled each other out. Poof! A universe of nothing but light. For you, me, for anything to exist, there had to be a tiny imbalance, a little bit of that sincere friction.
Here's an easy way to think about it. Imagine a floor that is perfectly, flawlessly smooth. Zero friction. Sounds great, but you couldn't walk on it. You'd just slip and slide forever, completely unable to move. To actually get anywhere, to live, you need some grit. You need that resistance. You need friction.
So, we've established this principle at the cosmic level. Now, let's scale it way up and apply that exact same idea to the world we live in. Because as it turns out, our societies need that friction too.
In sociology, there's a term for this, the human tax. And what is it? It's us. It's our messy, unpredictable, beautifully inefficient free will. And the huge systems we've built, our algorithms, our institutions, they see this human element as a bug, an error in the code that needs to be ironed out for the sake of perfect efficiency. But here's the paradox. Think of a skyscraper. If you built it to be perfectly rigid, with no give, the first strong wind would shatter it. It has to be engineered to sway, to be flexible, to survive. Well, society is no different. When you try to stamp out all that human messiness and demand rigid perfection, you don't create strength. You create something incredibly brittle, just waiting to snap.
And the framework has this absolutely brilliant and, brutal metaphor for where we are right now. Society today is like a bad app with a memory leak. You know the type. It's just spinning and spinning, burning through all of its emotional and economic RAM, processing these endless polarized conflicts, until the whole system just freezes and crashes to desktop.
Now this is where it gets really personal. We've gone from the cosmos to society, and now we're going one level deeper, inside our own heads. Because that brittleness we see out in the world, it has a direct and frankly, a pretty terrifying parallel in our own psychology.
Okay, so in a healthy, flexible mind, this is how we're supposed to process the world. It's a logical chain. You do something, you observe what happens, you look at the evidence, and then you draw a conclusion based on facts. Simple, right? But when we're in that fragile, brittle state, we enter what this framework calls opposite land. And in opposite land, that entire sequence is flipped on its head. It doesn't start with an action, it starts with a powerful core feeling, like, I am being treated unfairly. That feeling then demands a story to make sense of it. And to protect that story, your brain will literally rewrite your memories in real time and project your own flaws onto other people. You're building an entire reality backward.
So this is the million-dollar question, right? How can you possibly tell if you or someone you're talking to is trapped in opposite land? Well, the framework gives us a really simple but powerful diagnostic tool to spot this mental brittleness in action.
It's called the JADE Protocol. JADE. Think of it as an acronym for the 4 main defensive reflexes that a brittle ego uses. When you see these, you know you're not dealing with reality anymore. You're dealing with a system protecting itself.
So what is jade? Justify, argue, defend, and explain. Think about the last time you had a really tense disagreement. Did you find yourself justifying your actions, making excuses? Were you arguing just to win instead of to find the truth? Were you defending your status, your pride, instead of the actual facts? Or were you explaining on and on because the simple truth felt too harsh? If you answered yes, you've met jade.
So what's the move? The moment you feel that urge to jade welling up inside you, you have one job. Deploy a mandatory 6-second pause, a full, silent 6-second interrupt before you say or do another thing. And that 6 seconds isn't some random number. That's the actual biological time it takes for your brain to shift gears. It's the time you need to move from that initial, hot-headed fight-or-flight reaction of your amygdala over to the calm, logical processing of your prefrontal cortex. You're basically giving the rational part of your brain a chance to get back online. In that simple tool, that little pause, it lets us stop fighting against reality and instead learn how to embrace the friction. And that's really the core lesson here. True resilience doesn't come from being perfect and rigid, it comes from learning how to bend.
So in the end, we're all left with a fundamental choice. Do we build a brittle system, whether that's in ourselves or in our society, one that defends a perfect image with heavy armor until it inevitably shatters under pressure? Or do we build a damped system, one that accepts a little bit of imperfection, a little sincere friction, so that it can bend, absorb energy, and resonate, just like that beautiful musical chord? And that leaves us with one final thought. The next time you feel that discomfort, that grit, that sudden urge to justify, argue, defend, or explain, what if you saw it not as an error that needs to be eliminated, but as the very signal that you're alive? What if that annoying, irritating friction is the exact space where real growth and grace can actually happen?